Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And Mrs. King, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
She may not have heard you.
I think she did it. Greg, would you like to?
Yeah. Do you know it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. We're dedicating tonight's meeting to John Stalker. Our condolences go to the Stalker family with the sudden loss of their son, John. He graduated from Pine Plains High School, joined Local 21, and was a welder. He was the father of 2 young children, Sophie and Thomas. The members of the Stalker family are well known to the community, very involved with sports, hunting, and other activities. He will be greatly missed, and if we could have a moment's silence. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Wendy Burton?
Yes.
Nathan LaBerture?
Yes.
Corey Flanagan?
Yes.
Dan Aaron?
Yes.
Margaret Fallon, absent.
I'd like to, I think we need to add to the agenda that we will be going into executive session.
That should be on there. Is it down at
Yeah.
the bottom? I
At the end.
updated. It was on the.
Oh, I didn't
on
get
the
one.
table, too.
Okay. And was there something else we were?
Resolution for 7A.
Thank you. Then I would make a motion to approve the agenda as it is. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Liaison reports, Corey?
I was unfortunately unable to make it this month to the planning board meeting,
Okay.
so I'll have to report back on that.
Ann?
Fire district was, here. Oh, sorry. Fire district was pretty straightforward this month. I spent some time discussing the ambulance agreement with NDP, Northern Dutchess Paramedics. They started their agreement in June, and it'll go till December. They did a 6-month, and then they'll start again in January with a full year, so that they have a full year agreement, and that's how it'll be going forward. There's a couple junior members who are coming up to being 18 or have just turned 18 that'll be becoming senior members. That was exciting to see, that we have some people, and of course, they're always still looking for volunteers. So. And
That's it?
pretty
Nathan?
much.
So the scheduling snafu that we had with the rec, we did meet on the 14th. So there were, the update is they had the sheds installed. The next step is to try and get electric installed as well. They also have ordered new lifeguard chairs with the grant money. The docks are here, but there is a issue, which it sounds like you, based on your reaction, you're aware of the issue and how they connect. So they're exploring some alternatives to what to do there. So I think for now the previous docks are going to stay in place.
Oh, I thought the new docks aren't in place and just a little bit jerry-rigged?
When we spoke on the 14th, that was the status, and I haven't heard anything different from Lauren at this point. That's what she was going to look into. I think the next day she was going to have a conversation. I didn't hear what happened, but
I think that might have happened.
okay. There were some other activities, but they've all passed at this point, so there's no real reason to mention them. The art show that is still planned for late summer, early fall has stalled a little bit, just from a personal reason, the person that was leading it. There's some discussion about adding some new structures and reusing some existing or previously existing structures from the rec to use over at the Haunted Fortress. There is no update on the soccer program at the moment, and they are planning to participate in Community Day in the fall. And this says the rec opens next Friday, but that was several weeks ago. And they're not having a meeting this month, so they will have their next meeting in August. That's it.
So my report, thank you. First, I would like to thank everyone for the kind notes and prayers that went on behalf of my husband's surgery. It means a tremendous amount to both of us, and we've been deeply moved by the community outreach to us. I have been asked to join the Executive Committee of the Association of Towns. I've accepted that. I'm deeply honored to have been asked. The Association of Towns services all of the towns within New York State, and they are the advocacy group to the state legislature. So I've previously been on the Resolutions Committee, but now I'll more actively be engaged in helping to set the agenda for the Association of Towns for their legislative agenda to the state legislature, which basically means that for the first time ever, this corner of Northern Dutchess will have someone at the table kind of speaking to our local concerns. So I'm very happy. I think I will learn a lot, and I believe that I'll also be able to bring the concerns of our citizens to the table in Albany. I still have not received a contract to consider contracting with the Pine Plains Police Force for 14 hours a week, primarily for speeding infractions. I spoke to Brian Walsh today. Their lawyer hasn't produced the contract yet, but I think I may get it next week, and then we will be discussing it. The hope is that whatever the cost is for the 14 hours a week will be offset by the revenue that comes in from speeding tickets, and the whole intent really is to, I guess, to make drivers know that Stanford isn't a speed-through community. And once that's established, my hope is that speeding will slow down. I mean, I believe the sign incentives that we have up are doing some good, because I've sat and watched traffic on 82 slow down. I still would like to go up to Albany and talk to the commissioner of the DOT to see if we can just get the speed limit reduced without jumping through $100,000 worth of hoops. But in any case, that's where we are with the police force. The electronic speed trackers are now on Layton Road, which is the detour, one of the two detours, while the Huns Lake Road is closed for the bridge being redone. It's not exactly easy to get permission to put those speed indicators anywhere. We have more latitude on town roads, but we still have to get permission from the homeowners to put them on their property. That's on town roads. Once the county roads and the state roads are much more complicated, because we have to get permission from the county and from the state and have to jump through a lot of hoops for the placement and how they interact with other signage. Yes? So it's actually easier for us to put them on local roads, because it's easier to just get permission from homeowners.
When we discussed purchasing these with the AARP funds, one of the topics that we had, I remember discussing, was I know that it's a complex scenario to go through the location on county and state, but I thought that if we selected a location, once we had that location, we didn't have to do it each time for that location. Is that still correct?
That's why we keep putting it back on 82.
Okay, because those are,
permission.
okay, got it. I want to make sure, because something I read yesterday or today, I thought it was like for each location we had to keep doing it, and I was like, oh man.
No.
Okay.
Unless, Jane, I'm mistaken, now, once the locations have been approved,
The two locations on 82 have been approved by the state.
Right. So,
So as
but
long as we use those locations, we don't need to reapply.
okay, got it. Okay, that's what I wanted.
yeah.
Even if we take them away and bring them back, we don't need to. Okay. Thanks.
And then the last bit of news I have is that the rec fundraising committee is getting very close to submitting a grant request for $500,000 to New York State for the renovation of Spark Park. And I've been soliciting letters of support from Michelle Hinchy, from Dee Dee, from the surrounding supervisors, and then I think we're also getting some from local businesses. But we came very close last year to getting that grant. And then when we didn't get it, they explained to us what the components were that were a little soft. So hopefully this time around, we'll get that grant. My liaison report, the ZBA met last night. There were 2 public hearings, a variance, an 8-foot variance for a side setback concerning a garage at 25 Trestle Lane was unanimously approved. And then there was property interpretation for the property belonging to Benjamin Rathjen at 158 Charwell Drive. Comments went on from the public for about an hour and a half. The public hearing was closed, and then the CBA voted unanimously to approve the property for nursery and horticultural use and change the designation from contractor's yard. And I was not able to attend the meeting of the Climate Smart Task Force because I was in New York. My financial report, you received my bank reconciliation and supervisor's report. I cannot find 40 cents that's missing in the general fund. I can't remember if I have 40 cents too much or too little, but 3 people have looked at it and haven't been able to find that 40 cents, so we will continue until we find it, because it has to be perfect. There were no red flags as far as expenditures for the first 2 quarters of 2023. Revenues, I still have concerns over the mortgage tax income we received from the county for the reasons I've cited in the past. The same is true for court revenue, though I do believe that it has started to climb back. We are way ahead in interest income due to the transferring of funds to our New York class accounts, which are benefiting from 4.9% interest rates. Our building department research fees are down, which may be because there's so little housing stock on the market, and our disposal tickets are up, and I think that's it. So, I would now make a motion to open the meeting to privilege of the floor. If you want to speak, just please say your name and address and come to the podium. And I believe you have... Sorry.
I'm
You
seconding
said make a
your
motion.
motion.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And I believe you have 3 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. And there is a second privilege of the floor if you don't get to say everything you want to say.
Thank you, sir.
Stick around and say it later. Thank you. Thank you. What's the matter?
We can share.
We can share it, I'll get one tomorrow, that's fine. You can give it to me.
Thanks, Jones.
We'll share. Good evening, town board members and concerned residents.
Jim, just say your name and address.
I'm sorry.
That's
James King, 176 Charwell Drive. 2 years ago, I advised this board via letter of the usual operation of a commercial construction company at 158 Charwell Drive, which is zoned RR Rural Residential. Nothing was done by this board or has been done. Subsequently, this board appointed the owner of the Charwell property to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I complained that this was unethical, and I still believe it's unethical, but he's still on the board. The owner of 158 Charwell Drive then expanded his contractor's yard, which only increased the noise and truck traffic in the area. 2 years later, this is now a very big commercial operation. Still no action from this board. Last night, July 12th, a ZBA public hearing was held to alter the allowed use of 158 Charwell Drive, allowing continued use of this residential property as commercial, now to be considered horticultural in nature. For 2.5 hours, residents presented photos of tractor trailers making deliveries, DEC documents, documented detailed substantial truck traffic, and worst of all, statements of devalued property values in the neighborhood, substantiated by our assessor. 2.5 hours of complaints and documented wrongdoings. 15 minutes later, Rathjen was permitted to continue his questionable operations. No discussion or even acknowledgement of the hard work done putting the facts, proven facts together, explaining why a commercial construction operation by any name does not belong in any residential area. Obviously, the board had made up its mind before even entering the room. The board of which Mr. Rathjen is a member, by the way. This board, our town board, is responsible for the devaluation of real estate property and making the roads around Charwell Drive unsafe due to the significant increase in traffic, especially large truck traffic. This is reported by several mothers from the area at last night's meeting. Obviously, this is your legacy, board members. One that will destroy the peaceful character of our town. And all I can say is, well done. And this is not exactly community before politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes.
Kathy Zier, 158 Shelley Hill Road. I am the ZBA chairperson. This is I'm not representing the entire board on this, but I just want to further report on the ZBA meeting, public hearing last night. Okay, the ZBA members carefully listened to many citizen comments regarding the property determination appeal for 158 Charwell Drive with respect and made the decision based on zoning law. To emphasize, the ZBA has the ability only to interpret current zoning law. The proper process directs all complaints regarding zoning to be reported to the building inspector for action, but does not include the town board notifications as was done in this situation. This town board involvement and taking, quote, sides in such property neighborhood issues does not reflect the election of the town board members to represent all citizens equally. Also noted, this behavior does not follow the motto as quoted from the Stanford Democratic website. Community over politics is rooted in our conviction that there is no place for politics and divisiveness in local government. Our goal is to continue to unite all Stanford citizens and to nurture a sense of togetherness, community, and civility. We are dedicated to preserving Stanford's rural character and beauty, protecting the environment, supporting all local businesses, and keeping our neighbors and families healthy and safe. And I want to thank my board for taking this very seriously, spending a lot of time to research, to review this current zoning law, and the decision stands. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, do you want that read into the minutes, or do you want me to just do that?
Is anyone else?
Jim Griffin, 71 Charwell Drive. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I don't have a lot to say on this zoning issue specifically, but I do know the ZBA meeting I attended, I'm seeing people treated differently, apparently based on if they're members or not. Just before Mr. Rathjen's appeal went in the meeting last month, there was a hearing for another subject that Ms. Zaria had to, had to recuse herself from. And I think due to that, the applicants in that matter weren't heard. They wanted to speak again before they were dismissed. They weren't allowed to. Mr. Rathjen was given that opportunity last night. I'm sorry. Mr. Rathjen was given that opportunity last night. And, you know, I don't want to talk about neighbors, anything like that, but I see different ways people are being handled. And that's it.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Devo?
Off the subject again. Could you clear, Devo Martini, 337 Shelley Hill. Could you clear up the 14-hour per week traffic police?
There were, no, it's not, it's 4 4-hour shifts, so that's 16 hours, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I was missing 2 hours there.
Is that going to be, it's going to be contracted, right? Through Pine Plains?
Yes, if, and we obviously would have to agree to the contract
Right,
with our
right.
attorney.
But
Yeah.
that's the approach.
And it would be on a trial basis.
Yep.
And then we could decide that it's not effective.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
What's the length of trial? 6 months?
Well,
3
Devo,
months?
this hasn't even really come to the board yet,
Okay.
so I can't speculate because we haven't discussed it.
So it's just something that
Yeah.
we talked about briefly,
Right,
in brief,
right.
and that's it, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
I have, I received a letter from Diane Duffus, 71 Hicks Lane, that I'd like to read into the record. I am appalled and deeply disappointed in the protocol and outcome of tonight's public hearing regarding the disruptive commercial activity on Charwell Drive. Residents in attendance and those who made sure that their insights were shared by others if they could not attend spent significant time to research and document the facts, prepare their extremely compelling presentations, and produce assorted documents and visuals based on their direct experience to present to the ZBA. Numerous residents provided their opinions, the majority of which were in opposition to this type of activity in a previously quiet rural residential neighborhood. What became quickly evident to me in hearing the thoughtfully shared informations and concerns is that this is not just a Charwell neighborhood issue, but rather a townwide issue. Given the current allowances, this scenario could very easily occur in any of our town neighborhoods. And the decision made by the ZBA, which should have been made after a post-hearing committee deliberations that took into account all of the information presented, would certainly set a precedent for all future zoning scenarios in our town moving forward. At the conclusion of the hearing, without any pause whatsoever, the ZBA chair simply changed the designation from commercial contractor site to horticultural business, which is allowable without permits under the current zoning regulations. There was absolutely no discussion, no consideration of the facts brought to their attention. Their decision was predetermined, and the chair read it from a pre-typed document. This is not how public hearings should be conducted. It felt very dismissive of the words and experiences of our fellow residents. It is worth mentioning, too, that the business owner is a current ZBA member whose activities were favorably voted on by fellow committee members prior to this hearing. A commercial landscaping business contractor yard simply should not be permitted on a rural residential property. While I am uncertain at present about what specific actions must be taken to move forward with what has been observed and learned this evening, it is clear that the proceedings of tonight's hearing should not be repeated and that our own zoning plans need significant review and revision. The latter should be a priority. I would kindly ask that you share this letter with the ZBA. Thank you, Diane Duffus. Does anybody else have anything that they want to add at this time? Okay, then I make a motion to close privilege of the floor.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
So all in favor?
Introduce revision of local law number 1 of 2023, alarms, and set public hearing date. So did you bring a revision of Jane's?
Yes, I have a revision of this proposed law, copies for everyone.
Okay, so,
I don't know, Wendy, did the board have a copy of the previous draft?
you mean
I
of
can
Jane's?
just outline the changes.
Yeah, just, that would be great.
Really, it's just the only changes that were made, other than some minor formatting, is Section 5 and Section 6. 5 just says that all of the provisions of that section of the code, that chapter of the code, remain unchanged except as modified by this amendment. And then Section 6 says that the local law will take effect immediately, because this will have to be filed as a local law and is subject to a hearing. So this is the first step to introduce the proposed local law, which can then be adopted at a later meeting after the hearing.
So at the next town board meeting, we could have a second reading of this and also have a public hearing after the second reading?
We can. It doesn't have to be read a second time. You can go straight to hearing.
Okay.
And following the hearing, you can adopt it.
Okay. So,
and this would have a local law. This would have a local law number, whichever the consecutive number may be. If this perhaps is going to be local law number 2 or whatever.
okay, so it won't still be local law
It won't
number 1?
No,
amended.
because we're doing a,
This one.
No, we've already done another law this year, so whatever our subsequent consecutive numbering is.
this itself is going to be adopted as a local law, so it has its own number.
Correct. But we've already, what I'm trying to say is I thought we already adopted this and we're amending it so it already has a number.
That was, you adopted it by a previous local law. So,
We can figure out what number it should be.
that was the first local law. This is going to be a second local law.
So is this the
There's a chapter of the code which was adopted, but and now we're amending the chapter of the code, but each action is a separate local law.
Got it. Thank you, Bob.
So this change is a resolution, and then
This
at
is,
the public hearing, you'll assign it a local law?
well, you would call it a proposed local law number, whatever the next number is.
So should I give this a resolution?
Well, it's a resolution number for tonight. So resolution, what,
This would
7A
be-
or something like that?
No, I think it's 7B.
Okay.
You have 7.
Yeah. So
Okay.
can we set the hearing date for the August meeting?
August?
Is everybody here in August for the meeting?
Mhm.
You?
Yeah, we'll get into that later, but my August is a bit of a mess, but nothing's
It's on the
confirmed.
7th, right?
Okay.
So
The 7th?
Well, I'll be there.
Don't plan around me.
The 7th?
Okay.
The
Oh,
7th.
all right, so let's-
Our meeting's going to be in August, will be the 10th.
August 10th?
Yeah,
I'm good.
workshop will be the 2nd.
Okay, so let's set the date of August 10th for the public hearing. Do we need to vote on that?
No, you need to vote on the introduction of the
Resolution.
resolution.
Okay,
Are you making a motion?
you making a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt resolution 7B, which is an amendment which will effectively create a new local law.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the fireman's exemption, that would be law number 2 of 2023. And I had written that law, but did I apparently asked you to revise?
Yes, I have that one also, folks. Give me just a sec.
This law basically, although we already had a law that gave property tax exemption to firemen, and the maximum, I'm sorry to say, is 10%. And I tried to ask if we could make it a higher percentage, and the state doesn't allow that. But we were mandated by the governor to redo the law, even though we already had the law. So that's what this local law number 2 will be. A property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers under section 466A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law. So I'm introducing this local law number 2 tonight.
Okay, so we'll call the alarm amendment local law number, proposed local law number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so being enacted by the town board of the town of Stanford as follows. Section 1, legislative intent. The New York State Legislature recently amended the real property tax law
We'll call it proposed.
to create a new section 466A to provide an exemption of up to 10% of the assessed value of real property owned by volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. In order for the exemption to be available, it is necessary for the local government body to adopt a local law providing for such an exemption and establishing the minimum service requirement and certification of service requirement. The town board has determined that volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers provide essential services to the town residents, and providing such a real property tax exemption will help with recruiting new members and retaining existing members of the volunteer fire and ambulance services. Therefore, the town board has determined it is in the best interest of the town to enact a local law providing for such real property tax exemption. Section 2, Chapter 144 of the Town of Stanford Town Code, entitled Taxation, is hereby amended by repealing the existing Article 3 of the chapter entitled Firefighters Exemption and replacing it with a new Article 3 with the following language. Article 3, Voluntary Firefighters and Ambulance Workers Exemption, Statutory Authority. The purpose of this local law is to grant a partial exemption from taxation to qualifying volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers in the town of Stanford as authorized by Section 466A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law and New York Municipal Home Rule Law. Those were 3.
We can all take turns.
I'm sorry?
We can all take turns.
We could. Why don't you pick up? Can you speak into this?
All right. Exemption granted. Any enrolled member of an incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated volunteer ambulance service will be entitled to an exemption of 10% of the assessed value of real property owned by the enrolled member as set forth below, with respect to the real property taxes of the town of Stanford, provided that 1. The volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker resides in the town of Stanford. 2. The property is owned by the volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker. 3. The property is a primary residence of the volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker, provided, however, that in the event any portion of such property is not used exclusively for residential purposes, such non-residential portion shall be subject to taxation, and the remaining portion only shall be entitled to the exemption. 4. The property is used exclusively for residential purposes. 5. The town of Stanford is served by such incorporated volunteer fire company or fire department or incorporated volunteer ambulance service. 6. The volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker is certified by the authority having jurisdiction as an enrolled member of such an incorporated volunteer fire company, fire department, or incorporated volunteer ambulance service for at least 2 years. Any member who has achieved over 20 years of accumulated service shall be considered a life member, and this exemption will continue for the remainder of their life for so long as their primary residence remains in Dutchess County, and the governing body of the village, town, or county has adopted a local law providing for this exemption. C, any unremarried spouse of a volunteer who was killed in the line of duty shall continue to receive the exemption if 1, the authority having jurisdiction certifies that the unremarried spouse is an unremarried spouse of a volunteer who was killed in the line of duty and who was eligible for the exemption, and 2, the volunteer had accumulated at least 5 years of service, and 3, the residence at which the volunteer resided continues to be the primary residence of the unremarried spouse. D, any unremarried spouse of a volunteer who passed away shall continue to receive the exemption if 1, the authority having jurisdiction certifies that the unremarried spouse is an unremarried spouse of a volunteer who passed away and who was eligible for the exemption, and 2, the volunteer had accumulated 20 years of service, and 3, the residence at which the volunteer resided continues to be the primary residence of the unremarried spouse and is in the county of service. E, a volunteer firefighter or volunteer ambulance worker must annually, on or before the applicable taxable status date, file an application for such property tax exemption with the Town of Stanford assessor on a form as prescribed by the New York State Commissioner of Taxation and Finance. The Town Board of the Town of Stanford shall maintain written guidelines available upon request as to the requirements of an enrolled volunteer member relating to this exemption. F, if the volunteer has claimed a credit on their New York State income tax pursuant to the New York State Law 606E1, no exemption may be granted. G, except as here and above amended, the remainder of the Code of the Town of Stanford shall remain in full force and effect. H, the provision of this local law are severable, and if any provision, clause, sentence, subsection, word, or part thereof is held illegal, invalid, unconstitutional, or inapplicable to any person or circumstance, such illegality, invalidity, or unconstitutionality, or inapplicability shall not affect or impair any of the remaining provisions, clauses, sentences, subsections, words, or parts of this law, or their application to other persons or circumstances. It is hereby declared to be the legislative intent that this local law would have been adopted if such illegal, invalid, or unconstitutional provision, clause, sentence, subsection, word, or part had not been included therein, and as if such person or circumstance to which the local law or part thereof is held inapplicable had been specifically exempt therefrom. Section 3. This local law shall take effect as of the date of filing with the New York Secretary of State. Town Supervisor Wendy Burton advised the Town Board that pursuant to the municipal home rule law of the State of New York, it was necessary to hold a public hearing upon this proposed local law. Whereas Supervisor Burton has introduced this proposed local law for the Town of Stanford to be known as Town of Stanford Proposed Local Law Number 2 of 2023, entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 144 of the Town Code to authorize a property tax exemption for volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers under Section 466A of the New York State Real Property Tax Law. Now therefore be it further resolved that a public hearing be held in relation to the proposed local law as set forth in the form of notice hereinafter provided, at which hearing parties and interested citizens shall have an opportunity to be heard, to be held at the Town Hall. Are we doing this in August?
August 7th? August 10th?
Are we doing, I mean, the August?
So I think we
Public
should
hearing?
make this public hearing the August 10th meeting and do proper notice of those.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the 10th.
August 10th, 2023, at 7:00 p.m., and that notice of said meeting shall be published in the official newspaper of general circulation in the Town of Stanford by the town clerk at least 5 days before such hearing, and that such notice shall be in the following form.
You want me to read?
Yeah, why don't you take over?
That's
We're good?
good.
Yeah,
Good.
I don't think we
Okay.
need to read the public
See?
hearing.
I waited a
Yes.
perfect amount of time.
Motion.
I make
So we need to make a
to,
motion.
For the introduction of
I'm sorry?
Yes.
it. For the introduction of it.
I make a motion for the introduction of this local law.
I second that.
I'm sorry, a little confused about what number this law is.
Yeah.
It's going to be number 2.
Number 2. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Okay.
Okay, and August 10th.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, then, where's my resolution? I think I've ever done this. Oh, that's right. Resolution number 7A of 2023 to transfer funds from the Building Reserve Fund account, New York, class ending in 06, and moving the funds to the general fund ending in 018. This is something that the board already approved, but we need to make a separate motion for me to actually move the funds. So we approve the usage. Okay. Whereas the town of Stanford has funds to install new linoleum tile from Foster's Flooring at Town Hall entries, and whereas the New York class account ending in 06 building reserve account contains funds for this purpose, and whereas the town of Stanford will transfer funds from New York class account ending in 06 building reserve to the Millbrook general fund account ending in 18. Now therefore be it resolved, the supervisor is authorized to complete the following budget modifications and transfer the funds from the building reserve account to the general fund account.
Make a motion to accept the resolution.
To do a roll call vote. So you,
Somebody needs to second it first.
Oh, did anybody?
I second it.
Sorry.
and then a roll call vote, Wendy Burke,
Yes.
Nathan LaRoche.
Yes.
Cory Flanagan.
Yes.
Jane Eric.
Yes.
Mark
Oh, boy.
Did you skip number 3?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Did you skip number 3?
it's,
I may have, I'm so close, oh, yes, I did. We have to set a new date for the comprehensive review plan hearing because we missed, unfortunately, just by a day or two, when the notice for the public hearing goes into the newspaper. So, and this has to be, we were going to do it on July 24th.
Yep.
And we're going to be able, I believe, to do it at Cold Spring School. We just have to file the necessary paperwork. So, let's see. What if we tried to do it on July 31st, just the next Monday? Because that gives Doreen enough time to file the notice.
We needed 3 days notice.
Right.
Let me just check the calendar here.
July 31st?
I think that I'm
Oh,
here
July-
for
yeah,
that.
that would
I
be
have to
fine.
double check. I know we're going on vacation the 1st.
Okay, so you can be here for that?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm free.
Yeah? Okay, then I make a motion to reset the public hearing for the comprehensive review plan, for July 31st at 7 o'clock at Cold Spring School.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The only thing is I have to get permission,
Okay.
Yeah.
otherwise it'll have to be here. Number 5 on the agenda is the Haunted Fortress, the bid to fix the Cattail Bridge, which is in serious disrepair. Jane went out and, after a huge amount of effort, was able to get 2 bids. Greg, this bridge is, the material is being supplied, donated. So, yes?
It is repurposed from the old wreck.
Okay. Oh,
tables.
from the tables,
picnic
fabulous.
tables.
I knew
Oh,
you were
nice.
going to put those to good use.
It's
Okay.
already weathered, looks great, and it's still sturdy as heck.
They're Eternium material, yeah. So we got 2 bids, one from Hudson Valley Works, and the labor cost is $5,200. And then we got a second bid from Hudson, what's HPM?
HBM Craftsman.
HBM Craftsman. And their bid remarkably was $13,845. So I make a motion to approve the bid by Hudson Valley Works, and this will, for the $5,200.
Second.
Second, now is there discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. So when we had conversations about this, we only had the one bid, and we've got the second one. And one of the things that was included in the second, I just want to make sure if it's either, it is accounted for in this first bid, and...
What?
Sure.
Thank you, Nathan.
So I'm looking at the two bids, and one of the things that's interesting about the second bid, even though it's substantially more expensive, it mentions the removal of the existing bridge. And so is that something that is also included in this first bid, or is that something that you and volunteers plan to do?
There was no discussion of removal of materials. The volume of removal is very small. So
Okay.
I did not read the higher bid as having a removal. They mentioned that we...
It was the first thing they say is, it says remove existing railing system.
Well, yes, it's to remove
So-
it so we can put up a new one, but they're not removing it off the property.
Okay, so we don't anticipate that any of the labor costs here is going to be incurred there, because that's going to be something you and the crew will...
The posts and the railings are what's being replaced,
Yeah.
as well as some of the decking.
Yeah, no, I remember where we had to step over the holes. Yeah. Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure when we consider this cost that it's inclusive, at least that they're on,
Yeah, I think
there's
we're
parity.
going to say that they're removing it and then putting in new ones.
Okay, cool, thanks. Thank you, Jane.
Discussion? No?
Okay.
So Nathan that made the motion, was there a second?
I didn't
Second.
make the motion.
I think I made the motion.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, item number 6. Kim Acorn, who was the most talented bookkeeper I've ever had the privilege of working with, resigned. She has submitted her letter of resignation and has already moved to Florida, amongst many tears from this building. But we wish her the best in life, and I must make a motion to accept her letter of resignation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from June 8th.
I make a motion.
Second.
Are there any corrections? I think I sent my correction to Rita and she read it.
Okay. I have a copy. I don't know if it was corrected, but we can review it.
Okay, so you, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then approval of abstract number 6 for June. The general fund was $143,781. Highway fund was $34,982.24. Bengal Light was $838.66, and I'm very happy to say that the Bengal Light bill has been dropping substantially since we converted to LED lighting. And the highway vehicle reserve was
$201,000.
I'm so sorry, I haven't slept in a week.
Highway vehicle reserve is $201,953.67.
Thank you, Ann. Phew.
I motion to approve that.
Can I
Second.
vote on these if I didn't sign them?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Nathan abstains. Okay. So I will now open the floor for privilege of the floor.
158 Shelley Hill Road. I actually have 3 questions. My first question is, have we gotten input back from the county regarding setting up this public hearing for the comprehensive plan?
Bob has been in touch with the county as of this week, and they hope...
It is expected. I was expecting to have it tonight, but we don't have it yet.
It's not here yet?
No.
It is in the works, though. I spoke with them earlier in the week.
Okay, all right. Next question, regarding the possibility of having police, you said if it's successful, how do you know, you implied it's the financial part that's successful? And I wonder how you're going to judge this program successful.
I can't speak to that because we haven't discussed it yet. We do know that we will have to set up some guidelines to see if it's effective, so that we're not just paying them a monthly fee. But we have, as I said, it has not come before the board yet, so I don't have an answer.
Okay, and it was just an observation, on May 24th, I believe it was, the state police were sitting down by the pharmacy, and they gave out no tickets. Everybody slowed down way before, so financially, you're not going to see, where you said it might cover the cost of the contracts for them, so I just wanted to keep that in mind. And the last thing
Kathy, I don't believe that, I can't speak for the state troopers, but these policemen, who actually, the head of the department is John Hughes, who's a Stanford resident,
I know John.
they will be strategically placed, so they will be giving out speeding tickets, and that the whole point is to actually, it's like if Stanford gets to be known as a town that you can't speed in because you'll be ticketed, that will have long-term benefits for the whole community. So I can't speak for the troopers, but I know that their task will be not only, I mean, they will be right here if there's an emergency that needs police, but they will be tasked really with speeding.
Right, so I just hope once this is set up that we have a little more details, that's all.
Yeah.
And lastly, having been involved with the original building of the Great Science Fortress of Key Wing, I saw you were talking about reclaimed wood. I mean, there is some structural limitations on using reclaimed wood. I assume that's included in the bids?
This isn't, this is, the wood that's being used is the picnic tables that were replaced from, this is for the bridge. We bought new picnic tables, and I believe that material is what's being used for the cattail bridge.
Okay, it's not the old picnic table wood.
It is the old picnic tables.
Right, I just want to be, you know, I keep Pete Wing in the back of my head, safety, safety, safety. And when you do, like, building codes, I know you can't use reclaimed wood on certain structural parts of a project. I'm just bringing that to your attention, that's all, you know.
It's stronger and better than what was there that was built by Pete Wing.
I don't know for sure, but that was just, when I heard reclaimed wood, it just had a red flag, because that could, if it's a structural design, building codes, like you build a house, you can't put reclaimed wood as some of your structural things. That's all. Just a comment for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to say anything? I would like to, oh, I'm sorry, Jim. Sorry. Hello. Sorry.
Jim Griffin, 71 Charwell Drive. Coming back after a few years, we had a broadband committee in this town. The county got involved and killed all the broadband committees in the towns. We're 3 years later, and our access has not improved in this area. We're going into another school year. We're not doing remote, but we have kids who need to use the internet for home. So I kind of like to get that started again. And I'll volunteer to do whatever.
Well, you're talking about broadband accessibility at the school?
No, I'm talking about broadband accessibility to Stanfordville residents, including 5G, which is amazing everywhere that I don't live, and everywhere that's not right here.
You know, I believe that, and again, I truly haven't slept in a week, but I believe that it's either Michelle Hinchy or Dee Dee, who I did see today but didn't mention this. who is seriously working on that issue. I think it's Michelle.
Okay.
So that would be a good place for us to start.
Perfect. I'll reach out to her as well. Thank you very much.
Michelle also has mobile office hours too. So anyone
Right.
about any issue can find out what her mobile office hours are and get time with her and ask her those types of
In
questions.
fact, I got an email, I will try to remember to forward it to you, which was about her mobile hours.
Okay. Great.
And if anybody else got that email and is more awake than I am, then forward it to Jim. Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry for interrupting.
No problem. I guess I simply want to say I was talking to a gentleman I met outside of Jeannie Bean's today. Dee Dee had a public meeting, and she asked for supervisors to show up, so I sat with them for a while. And then I left the meeting, and I met a gentleman who lives on Upton Lake and apparently is fourth generation, with deep ties to the community. And he actually wanted to talk to me. He said he was very distressed about the language that was used in the proposition about the cannabis vote. And he said he was told by the Dutchess County Board of Elections that the town board had written that language, which I know we didn't, because we were as baffled as everybody who walked into the voting booths by how convoluted that language was. So I told him, Doreen, that I would research with Rita where that language came from, and then I would let him know. But we talked for quite a long time, and one thing that he said to me, and I don't know what party he's in, I didn't ask, but he said to me, do you know what people who have lived here for their whole lives think about you? And I said, I only know because of the people that have lived here their whole lives that are my friends. You know, I don't randomly take samples. And he said, do you want to know? And I said, sure. And he said, they think you're fair, which I thought was a wonderful comment. And what I want to say is that when I ran 3.5 years ago and I said community, not politics, it wasn't a jargon, it wasn't a motto. It's something I deeply believe in, and I have tried very hard over the past 3.5 years to live that in this position. Everything that was read from the Democrats, wherever, the page or whatever it was, I hugely believe in that, and I try to live by that. And I honestly do not believe that I have been partial in any proceedings. I have reached out to Mr. Rathjen, and I have didn't say a word at the public hearing because I'm just a liaison, but I think it's my job to be neutral, and all I'll say is I do my best to do that. And that's all I need to say. So I would now like to make a motion to close the privilege of the floor. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And now I make a motion to end the normal session and to go into executive session to discuss personnel. Second. Thank you. Aye. Aye. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jim. Nathan will send that to you.
If I can find it.
Oh, and also at 8:43, I make a motion to open the regular session. May I have a
Second.
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 Okay. At 8:43, that seems weird, but okay. I'll make it 8:44. So now I make a motion to, oh no, Margaret's, yeah, I make a motion to adjourn.
Should you just say that
Oh,
no action
no
was
action was taken.
taken during the session?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fine.
So we will adjourn at 8:44. Thank you, Pete.